Two police officers are standing in my driveway, and the HOA president is telling them I'm trespassing on my own property. My dream house I just bought 3 weeks ago. He's been squatting here, she says, voice sharp and confident, ignoring all our notices. We've documented everything. I'm standing on my front porch holding my coffee mug, trying to process what's happening. My heart's pounding. My hands are shaking. Not from fear, from pure rage. Officer, I say, keeping my voice as steady as I can. I own this house. I have the deed inside. The HOA president, her name's Margaret, steps forward with her clipboard like it's a weapon. He's lying. This property is under our jurisdiction. We have records proving. Ma'am. One of the officers interrupts. Let's just see some ID and proof of ownership. I invite them inside. My boxes are still half unpacked. Moving blankets on the floor. The smell of fresh paint still hanging in the air because I spent last weekend repainting the living room. I hand the officer my driver's license and the deed. He looks at it, looks at me, looks back at the deed. Sir, this all checks out. Your name matches. Address matches. Margaret's standing in my doorway now, face getting red. But the association, ma'am, the officer says, voice firm now. Do you have any documentation showing this property is part of your HOA? She opens her mouth, closes it, opens it again, and for the first time since I moved in, I see doubt flicker across her face. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because this whole nightmare started 3 weeks ago, the day I moved into my dream house, and met the woman who thought she could take it away from me. 3 weeks earlier, this place was exactly what I'd been looking for. Quiet street, no through traffic, mostly older homes, well kept but not fancy. The kind of neighborhood where people mind their business and wave if they feel like it. After 25 years in a crowded subdivision, that was all I wanted. Peace and space. Before I signed anything, I asked my real estate agent one very specific question. This isn't part of an HOA, right? He actually laughed. Said nope. That's why half the buyers who look here are escaping one. That was a selling point. At closing, I double-checked the paperwork myself. No association fees. No bylaws. No covenants. Just a standard property deed and a survey showing my lot. Sat outside the boundary line that stopped 2 houses down. I moved in that Friday. Saturday morning, I was unloading boxes when I saw her for the first time. Margaret, walking straight across my lawn like she already owned it. Clipboard in hand. No smile. No introduction. You'll need to park in your garage, she said. Didn't ask. Told. I figured she was confused. I explained I wasn't part of any association. She didn't even look at the documents I offered. This entire street falls under our rules, she said. You'll receive notices explaining compliance. That was the moment I should have realized this wasn't going to be a normal misunderstanding, because by Monday morning, the first notice was taped to my front door. And it didn't stop there. By the end of that first week, I had 3 notices. One for leaving my trash cans visible from the street. One for unauthorized exterior painting, because I touched up the trim. And one, my personal favorite, for non-compliant lawn height. Issued less than 48 hours after I moved in. I stood there in my driveway holding that last one, looking at a lawn that had been cut by the previous owner maybe a week earlier, and actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so ridiculous I didn't know what else to do. I wrote back, calmly, attached a copy of my survey, highlighted the boundary line, sent it certified mail, so there'd be a record. 2 days later, another notice showed up. No acknowledgement, no response, just a fine amount circled in red ink, like I'd agreed to any of this. That's when it stopped feeling like a mistake. Margaret started appearing everywhere. If I walked outside, she was across the street, watching. If I pulled into my driveway, she'd suddenly be checking a mailbox that didn't need checking. Once, I caught her taking pictures of my house. When she saw me notice, she didn't even pretend to hide it. Just kept snapping photos, like she wanted me to see. The neighbors? Nice enough, but nervous. Conversations got short whenever her name came up. One guy actually glanced over his shoulder before telling me, best not fight her. That wasn't advice. That was a warning. So I called a lawyer, and what he told me made my stomach drop. Because even when you're right, fighting an HOA can still get ugly. The lawyer leaned back in his chair after reviewing my paperwork. You're not in their HOA, he said. Not even close. Your property was carved out before the expansion 20 years ago. Legally, they have zero authority over you. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. He slid the documents back across the desk and added, but that doesn't mean they'll stop. Associations like this rely on pressure, paperwork, harassment. They assume most people will give in before it ever reaches a courtroom. I asked him what fighting it would take. Time, he said. Money. And patience. Even when you're right. I drove home with that word stuck in my head. Patience. Margaret, apparently, had none. The notices kept coming. Sometimes 2 in a day. Different violations. Different amounts. All unofficial. All meaningless. But still showing up taped to my door, like she was trying to bury me in paper. Then she escalated. One afternoon I came home and found small utility flags pushed into the edge of my lawn. Bright orange. The kind contractors use before digging. I pulled one out and walked next door. What is this? I asked. She didn't even look up from her clipboard. Preliminary marking, she said. The association will be extending landscaping improvements through this section. This section, I said slowly, is my yard. She finally met my eyes. No, she said. It's not. That was the moment I realized she wasn't trying to enforce rules. She was trying to claim my property. And 3 days later, she called the police. By the time the police left that morning, Margaret wasn't saying much. That confidence she had, gone. She stood on the sidewalk clutching that clipboard, like it was the only thing holding her upright while the officers explained, very clearly, that she had no authority over my property. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. Civil harassment. Incorrect jurisdiction. Do not contact him again without legal basis. Her face went pale. Not embarrassed. Not annoyed. Scared. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt tired. Because even after being told she was wrong, I knew people like her don't just stop. They regroup. They look for another angle. And she did. 2 days later, I received an envelope. Certified mail. Inside was a formal-looking letter from the HOA's legal office claiming there was a boundary interpretation dispute and requesting access to my land for a survey review. It sounded official. It also sounded like another attempt to bully me. So I forwarded everything straight to my lawyer. That's when things finally started moving in a different direction. Fast. Turns out, when an HOA tries to assert authority over property it doesn't legally control, that's not just annoying. It's liability. A big one. Within a week, my lawyer sent them a response package thicker than a phone book. Property history. County filings. Plat maps going back decades. A formal cease and desist notice. And one very clear warning. If they contacted me again, we'd take it to court. That's when the neighborhood started changing. Neighbors who used to avoid eye contact suddenly started waving. One of them finally walked over and said quietly, "You're the first person who's ever pushed back." And that's when I realized this wasn't just about my house anymore. It never had been. A week later, Margaret showed up again. I saw her from the kitchen window, heels clicking like a metronome of intimidation, clipboard in hand, walking up my driveway as if she owned it. But this time, she didn't look confident. Not even close. I opened the door, holding a cup of coffee like I wasn't about to explode. "Morning," I said casually. She cleared her throat. "We'd like to conduct a survey." I held up a finger. "Actually, no. Legal already answered that." Her eyes flicked to the stack of certified letters from my lawyer, all neatly arranged on the counter. The ones detailing county records, plats, and my property rights. "Your lawyer sent these?" she stammered, voice cracking slightly. I nodded. "Yup. Every single document proving this house is mine. You've been told, officially and legally, that you have zero jurisdiction here. And if anyone from your office contacts me again, we're taking it to court. Full stop." She went pale, muttered something under her breath, and turned around. I watched her march back down the driveway like a storm had passed. The next day, there were no notices, no fines, no hovering outside my property. Just quiet, real quiet. Neighbors started waving, stopping to chat. People who had once been afraid to step outside now lingered on their porches, and a small sense of justice settled over the street. I finally realized something. Standing your ground isn't just about winning for yourself. It's about showing others that they don't have to be bullied, that rules can't be weaponized against you, and that courage isn't loud. It's consistent, measured, and unshakable. Margaret never bothered me again. The HOA eventually sent a formal apology, clarifying that my property was never under their authority. And for the first time in weeks, I could sit on my porch, sip my coffee, and just breathe. Sometimes, the quiet victory tastes sweeter than shouting or revenge.